Welcome everyone, and thank you for coming to my new talk. It's about deploying ASP.NET Core applications. So for those of you who are familiar with ASP.NET Core, is a brand new framework. It has been out quite a while. It has been renamed from ASP.NET 5 to ASP.NET Core, and now the RC2 is out. Has been pushed out probably 14 days ago. As you can expect, there are breaking changes and things like that, and I'm going to guide you through how you can actually, as ASP.NET developers, learn how to publish ASP.NET Core apps. So this talk is purely about deployments, not about what ASP.NET Core is. I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough, but not much. Okay, so first we have to say thanks to our sponsors. Okay, so the agenda for today. First of all, I'm going to guide you through ASP.NET Core. Then I'm going to show you how you can deploy to IIS, how you can deploy to Azure. We're going to touch a bit about Octopus Deploy, release management for TFS, and the last one is I'm going to show you how you can deploy to Docker. So how many of you know all these technologies? Quite a few. Great, because I have an exciting demo for you. You're going to see continuous deployment to Docker at the end of the session. And my promise is that by the end of the session, you'll understand how to get from zero to running in Docker. So let's keep going. So for those of you who don't know me, you have probably noticed my accent. I'm from Slovenia, so I've spent the whole life there. I moved to Australia 2 years ago. I decided that Sydney is probably the best city to spend the rest of my life, and that's where I'm here. So I'm a solution architect at SSW, and beside that, I'm a Microsoft MVP. So Microsoft, I love doing heaps of things on the ALM stack, and Microsoft recognized me as an MVP a few years ago. I don't even remember, it's 4 or 5. Anyway, so this is a bit about me. So let's keep going. I have heaps of things to tell you. We're going to have to rush through all these things, so let's just keep moving. So what is ASP.NET Core? Well, if you ask Microsoft, they're going to tell you it's an open source, cross-platform, modern framework for building cloud-based web apps. Now, the bit I really don't like, it's not really cloud-based. You can deploy it to on-premises if you want. Nobody's going to stop you from that. And it's not really on .NET. I would say .NET different, because .NET Core is not the same thing as .NET. And the important bit here is it deploys a little bit differently than ASP.NET. So we're going to go through these steps very, very soon. Yeah, definitely. So how do you get started with ASP.NET Core? You have to install the ASP.NET Core SDK. So here's the link. You just go to .net.github.io, and you can pull down whatever you need from there. It's a really nice web page, so feel free to check it out. There are quite a few samples on ASP.NET Core. You can get them from GitHub as well. Or if you like, our two guys who are running ASP.NET Core plus Angular 2, Adam Stevenson and Duncan Hunter. That would kill me if I wouldn't mention this, but anyway. They have done a complete rewrite of Angular Music Store that you used to see it in ASP.NET MVC, and they put it on ASP.NET Core, and it's running on Angular 2. So if you want to get that one, it's on GitHub under SSW Consulting. So feel free to check it out. Okay, so how many of you have been using ASP.NET 5 or ASP.NET Core so far? Quite a few. Great. How many of you have deployed ASP.NET Core apps so far? Only 2, and even those are not sure about it. So there's a little trick here, ASP.NET 5 and ASP.NET Core, they're not the same things. Even though it feels like they are, they're not. And the thing is, because Microsoft likes to change things and they're trying new combinations, what they've done between ASP.NET 5 and ASP.NET Core, they took out this bit which is called DNX. So now when you're going to pull down the latest version and you're going to try DNX, to run DNX Web to run your next project, it's not going to work because it's not there anymore. So ASP.NET Core looks like this. The DNX bit is out. They have made some changes, not too many. You don't have to set up the commands anymore and things like that. But then again, I'm not going to go too much into details. Two important things, because I'm going to reference back to those later on, is classic ASP.NET runs on IIS. ASP.NET Core runs on Kestrel, which is a new web server. It's very lightweight, very efficient. So that's it. Okay, Now, a few important things to know about it. If you're running it in development, you have to install ASP.NET Core, and it comes with the CLR and the tools that you need to run all these things. Then you have your code, which contains project.json and a bunch of static files and things like that. And then you have third-party package dependencies. In production, things are a little bit differently. So you run on .NET Core only. So .NET Core SDK and .NET Core, they are two different things. Keep that in mind. And when you publish your application, it comes up with everything you need to run that app. So you don't have to care about what other tools you have to install. It's all there. Now, there are two important differences. So as you know, ASP.NET Core can run as a self-hosted app. And that means that you can dump out the binaries for a specific platform. So say if you want to run it on Mac OS, you actually specify that this is your platform, and it's going to dump out everything, including the binaries, to load up the Kestrel and all those things. I'm not going to touch self-hosted apps today. It's just about ASP.NET core apps that you can move across machines, but you have to have the framework installed on the machine. Alrighty, so there are 3 steps how you can deploy the app. First one is you restore the package dependencies, okay? Nothing dramatic so far. Then you publish your application, and then you deploy it with your tool, whatever the favorite tool it is. And that's it. It's very simple. It doesn't feel like that, but let me get into the trouble now. So, first one, if we publish, it's like this. .NET, so if you're used to .NET Core 1.0 RC1, you're going to have the NU there. It's not there anymore, it's .NET Restore. So that's the first change. It's the same thing for DNU Publish. It's now .NET Publish. So that's about publishing. And when you want to run it, in project.json, you used to have command that specified on which port you want Kestrel to run. All this is gone. You can still specify it, I think. I haven't tried because right now it's different. If you start a new project, it's not going to put it in there anymore. All it requires from you is it's to specify what assembly you want to run. And that's how you do it when you say .NET my project assembly.dll, and it's going to start up the project on port 5000. You can control that port through a variable, or you can do it through the code. It's up to you. So let me show you first of all how we're going to deploy these to IIS. If I'm going too fast, you can stop me for a second, but yeah. So first thing is you have to set up the web server. And when you set up the server, be careful not to set up any ASP.NET stuff or any .NET. I mean, you can if you want to run 2 things on the server, ASP.NET Core and classic ASP.NET apps. But ASP.NET Core works a little bit differently. For those of you who are doing the same thing on the desktop environment, just set up the management console, click on the Worldwide Web Services. It's going to pre-select the default settings. That's all good. Then what do? You go to command line. So you move to your project, whatever that is, and you call .NET Restore on that one. Now pay attention. I am in my web application 1 folder, because that's where my project.json file is. So when I run .NET Restore somewhere else, it's not going to work unless I specify what exactly I'm trying to restore. Then what I do, I call .NET Publish, and I dump everything to my C drive folder. So it's C demos DDD Sydney. And then I move to IIS. So what I do, I create a new website, and I point it to root, right? No. That's the breaking change. They've made that in the last 14 days. So from RC1 to RC2, things have changed. You don't point it to root anymore, you point it to the parent folder. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And then you create an application pool. Now pay attention, it has to be no managed code. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And then you get this. Great. So what a lovely application, isn't it? So has anyone have an idea why this has happened? I believe that most of you would, be like this. Okay, let me show you a clue, because that's what I didn't realize for a while. It's not very specific what actually went wrong. It's a classic, 519. So what you get is, if you go to docs.asp.net, down under IIS section, you'll see that there is a little bit about ASP.NET Core Windows Server hosting and what this is. So when I mentioned ASP.NET and ASP.NET Core, they're running on 2 different web servers. So ASP.NET runs on IIS, ASP.NET Core runs on Castrol, which is a new web server. And the 2 of them don't understand each other very well. So that's where this hosting bundle comes in, which serves as a proxy between the 2 servers. So right now you have IIS as your kind of facade for your web server that's running under Castro. And when you download that link, you get it from that URL. That's pretty much all you have to do. You pull it down, you install it, and voila. That's all you have to do, and then it starts working. So this is how you deploy ASP.NET Core app on IIS. If you don't install that bundle, it's never going to work. You're going to go around in loops like I did for days. Okay, what about Azure? How many of you are deploying to Azure now? Okay, probably half the room. So this one is much easier, Pretty much what you do, you right-click on your project, you go publish, and then you select Microsoft Azure App Service. It's going to bring up this nice dialog. You select what website you want to deploy to. You can create a new one if you like. It's really up to you what you want to do. Then it's going to present you with the publish dialog. You hit publish. What a surprise, and you're up. That's it. That's Azure. It's really simple. Of course, not everyone is deploying to Azure nowadays. There are other services. But there's one thing about Azure, There are 2 talks today about microservices. One of them is by Richard. I think he's talking about something really cool. And if you're thinking about doing microservices architecture, .NET Core fits nicely on that one. And deployment of .NET Core apps in Azure Service Fabric is a whole new story, so I'm not going to touch that. But that's one of the options. So maybe Richard will have something to tell about that. What do you mean? Sorry, the question was, when you deploy to Azure, can you choose what server you're deploying to? Well, that's a good question. To be honest, I don't know, but I can check. I never really cared about, as long as it works.
No, it's just Azure deploy. Yeah, but if it's an app service, it doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter.
Do you know?
It's not IIS.
I can check. Definitely it's not IIS because it's set up differently. So the thing is, you can host Castrol, wherever you want, but Microsoft kind of recommends that you host it behind a proxy because, it's going to serve out static config files and things like that. So I don't know how to do that in Azure now. Yes?
The bundle that you installed before the Azure deployment, can you pull it as a NuGet package?
I don't think so. There's a specific link. It's an MSI file. Because that installs a module in IIS. So I don't think you can do it as a NuGet package. At least I haven't come across. Yeah. Okay. Now we're to Octopus. So how many of you are using Octopus deploy? Okay, 1/3 of the room. You happy? Of course you are. Octopus is great. Let me show you how you do that with Octopus. So I skipped the pipeline, how you push the package in, but let's assume that you have the package in there. What do? You create a deployment step. You specify what's the deployment package. And there is a tricky bit. You don't have web.config file anymore. Now it's appsetting.json. So that's where the things change a bit. So this is just the rest of the page, but I couldn't put it, on one screen. You specify what's the website name. If you go to Octopus deploy help pages, it's going to say that you should put in root. Remember, this is ASP.NET Core RC2. There is no root. You don't do that. You leave the setting empty. But you specify what pool you want to use. Again, you have to use no managed code, and then you can set up the rest of the IIS bindings if you like. And there's one bit that's really important, in Octopus, as you know, you can replace variables in the files as much as you like. this is app-settings.json file. You know, if you wanted to run that across, you know, web.config file, what you would do? You would set up a variable there. If the variable matched whatever was the key in the app settings, it would replace it, and that's it. Now, things are a little bit different here. So in JSON file, you know, you have connection strings section, and then underneath you have another node default connection. So this is how you replace variables now in JSON files. You use the parent node, so connection strings, then you use colon for the next level, and then you specify default connection, and whatever goes in there, it's going to come up here. So if I was to set up like log level default, I would go logging colon log level colon default, and I would put in the variable, and that's it. So this is what you need to know about Octopus. And after you run that, you can browse the app, and that's it. So if you want, I can even show you that demo. I have a few of them to show. I'm rushing through a little bit because there are a lot of things to show. So let me go to Octopus. So this is, can everyone see that in the back, or should I zoom it? Adam, can you say that again?
You bumped it up to 125?
Yeah, of course. Good? I don't know how much the resolution is now, but anyway. So I've set up a simple process. I've pushed in a package, and this is a zip package, but you know, if you're using a pipeline, you can pretty much, all you have to do, you know, when I published everything to IIS, let me show you what happened there. Oh, I didn't put it out here. Anyway, so when I publish to a folder, what it creates, if I run, you know, .NET publish on a project, it's going to take everything that I have that I need to deploy, and it's going to push it out in one folder. So it's up to you how you create a zip file or a NuGet package. You can use a NuSpec file and push it into Octopus server. It doesn't really matter. Or you can create a zip file with the right version number, and off you go. So once you get to that stage, this is my Octopus project, and let me show you that there is no website under IIS. So Control 1. So I have 3 websites there. One is ASP.NET Core that I was playing with, and it probably doesn't work, and the binding was incorrect and things like that. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to deploy this version to dev. I'm going to give it a few seconds. So this is now deploying my ASP.NET Core that was packaged and, you know, preset to my local host. It's setting it up, and in a minute, maybe even less, we're going to have an ASP.NET Core running on my local host. I think it'll be on port 9000, but we'll see that. Let me just see if I refresh. It's not there yet. So now it's replacing the variables in, you know, app settings JSON file. And it's running the website on port 9000. And if I run that, it's going to take a little bit because the website has just been deployed. So this is on IIS. Octopus deploy so far doesn't support, or maybe it does. I didn't double check that, because you can still do some SSH. Adam, do you might know? Can you, you know, run that on Linux?
You could find a way.
There is a way to, you know, to do SSH connection, but I don't know if you can run bash on it. I think you could, but then again.
How big is the package that you deploy?
This one, it's pretty cheap. I think it's a few megs. So library, packages. So this is a zip file, and it's 6 megs. That's everything. My brand new ASP.NET Core application with everything I need except .NET Core. But you know, if you dump it out, you know, it's platform specific, so you can't really say for Windows it might be less than, you know, for Mac or vice versa. It really depends. This is, you know, considering that when we come to Docker, you're going to see, you know, how beautiful that is, you know, when you pull down an image and an image gets cached.
Because before you had to deploy the whole framework with that, it was like 16.
Yeah, if you do self-hosted, it's bigger. Then again, you have, load time is slower because it has to load all those assemblies. It's not pre-cached and things like that. So what do we have here? This is my ASP.NET Core application running on IIS, deployed through Octopus Deploy, and if I refresh the websites, this is my new demo that was set up with the bindings and everything using Octopus Deploy. So those of you who are using it, and if you're deploying to IIS, that's the way to do it. Okay, what about release management for TFS? So how many of you are using release management? None. Oh, a few? Okay. There's a brave one. I mean, Octopus Deploy is miles better, but there are reasons why release management is great in some areas, and I'm going to show you soon why. So first of all, what do? Are you using that on Visual Studio Online? Sir, you raised the hand.
You mentioned Release Manager is getting better every version.
Oh, it is. It's just, it's always one step behind Octopus, but then again. It is. That's a good thing about Release Manager. So if you're using that one, you install TFS, or if you're using a Visual Studio Online account, I still call it Visual Studio Online, and I don't know, I can't get used to VSTS. It feels like I'm getting back 10 years. Anyway, so what do? You go to VSTS, you create a build definition, you run it, and it tells you that .NET is not a recognized internal or external command. That's a great thing, .NET Core is RC2, Microsoft is not going to push it on the hosted build server, so if you run it from there, it's impossible. Well, not really. So what do? Well, you switch to a local TFS, of course, because that's where you control things. Now, the other thing is, if you're running VSTS, that's not, everything that is doomed, you can still create a local TFS agent, point it to the VSTS account, and it's going to do it for you. So what I do here, I run a PowerShell script that changes, the project.json version number, because right now there is no assembly info anymore. You have to do it to project.json. So I have a PowerShell script that transforms that. It takes the build number from TFS, it applies it to that file. Then I run a .NET restore. You don't see that on the left side because you have to rename a task. If you specify parameters, it's not going to bring them up by default. But anyway, so the first one is restore, the second one is publish. This is dumping out everything into the folder where I want it to be. And then I copy the files to the artifact folder. So as you know, in TFS, you have the artifact folder and you can push everything back to TFS for later usage. And that's what the last task does. So after that, you switch to release management. So you see there is another tab on the top. So on the left, pay attention to the top level. There is home code, work, build, test, release. So right now we are on build. And now I'm switching to release. I could do the same thing from build if I wanted, but the reason why I'm doing that through release is because I can control how things are executing, whether I want to, release that or not, or to what environment I want it to go and things like that. So for this purpose, I simplified everything goes to dev, but that's it. So what I do, first of all, I copy the files from my drop folder. So, in build, I created an artifact, whatever that was, the output of my .NET publish. And that's what I'm copying now to C inetpub www.root_rm. And then I'm using Windows Remote Management to set up the IIS application. And that's it. I specify parameters up there. And once I run that, you get a release, Of course, if it succeeded, it's great. And that's my application running on release management. You will see that the port up there is different. And let's see, 11,000. So the other one was running on 9,000, I think so. Any questions so far? Yeah, of course, go ahead.
So you mentioned for IIS, is there a minimum version of IIS that you can deploy this on?
Can you repeat the question?
For IIS, what's the minimum version of IIS that I can deploy these sites on?
So the question was, what's the minimum version of IIS that you can deploy to? I never really checked. But I believe, if you go to the Doom age with IIS 7, you should be fine. I don't think 6 could handle that because it really comes up to what's the compatibility between the hosting bundle and the IIS. I don't know to what version they've built it up to support. I can check that for you if you like. Alrighty, so now we come to the big one. So how many of you know Docker? Oh, fair bit, great. So the reason why Docker is so cool, for those of you who don't know it, is because it's a containerized thing. And that means that, whatever you publish, it's like I publish everything on my laptop and I say it works on my machine, then I take it to my manager and I say, this is what he wanted. That's something that works on my machine. And the next time, I deploy something, I don't take his laptop, bring it back home, deploy a new version. I take a new laptop, I take it to him, and that's Docker. That's exactly how Docker works. It's a container, you push it there, whatever is inside, if it works, it works. So how do you set up Docker? Well, there are quite a few prerequisites that you have to set up. So first one is Docker Toolbox that runs on VirtualBox. If you don't like VirtualBox, you can sign up for Windows / Mac version. It's a beta program, so if you're lucky, they're going to let you in. I don't know how they control this. I went through, so I can do it. That means that instead of running VirtualBox, this thing is going to run on Hyper-V. It's the same thing. In the back, it's going to run a Linux VM that's having Docker on top of it. But, the mainframe down underneath is different. So I prefer Hyper-V over VirtualBox, but that's it. And the last thing that you'll probably need if you want to start up quickly is the Visual Studio 2015 preview tools. You can download that. So this is how you can easily set up things. Now once you do that, you can right-click in your solution, go to Add, and you're going to have their Docker support. So if you click on that thing, what it's going to give you is a nice F5 experience. And you can start the app from there. It's going to deploy that directly to Docker. It's using the Docker debug. Well, this is debug file. Release is a bit different, but let me guide you to this one because it's important that you understand how this works. So Docker, if you want to deploy something to Docker, you have to specify what image you want to use. So that's what the first line is up there. It's from Microsoft. I want to take .NET image that's 1.0.rc2.core. I'm not going to go into details, how Docker exactly works and how images are handled and things like that. But the thing is, if I want to run my application on Docker, I have to specify what exactly I want it to run under. And that's what I'm doing. If I want to run my app, now this is the question you asked about installing the right runtime. That's what I do here. I take the pre-installed image from Docker Hub, I pull it down, and this image is then cached. And after that, I deploy my things on it. So in this case, it's deploying the CLR debug, which means that if you press F5, you can debug your code on Linux. You step through every single thing. You're going to see, if there are exceptions, you're going to see everything. So that's the bit that takes care of this. For production, you won't have it, but that's what you'll have later on. So you copy the app from your folder, wherever you published. Generally, you publish to app folder or whatever you like. This is what comes out by default. And then you set that as a working directory. Now, that's the important bit that happens. In Castrol, now I'm coming back to the web server of ASP.NET Core. You had to specify how you want it to run on which port. This is how you change the variables now. So if you want to run it on a different port, feel free to do so. You have to expose that port on the Docker container as well. And once you do that, the rest is pretty easy. So this command is pretty long because it's doing debug as well. But the point is you have to specify the entry point, and the entry point is pretty much just this. You go .NET, your assembly name.dll, that's it. So that means that if you're going to run the Docker container, once you do that, it's going to automatically start your .NET application. Now that's the easy way. Now, let me show you how is the hard way, because obviously you're not going to deploy from F5 experience, especially not if you're going to go into the cloud. So this is how you do it. I have the same build definition as before. It's just with some modifications. So I've got a PowerShell that applies version number. So this time I renamed the tasks. I was very careful. So I do run .NET restore. Then I run .NET publish. Then I copy the files. So what I specified in my solution, and I'm going to run you through this demo in a minute. I created a Docker file and I published it as part of my solution, and now I'm copying it because the next thing that I do, I run Docker build. And what Docker build does, it creates an image from a Docker file. So whatever I specified in that Docker file, take the image, copy the files over, expose the ports, change the environment variables. That's going to happen when I run Docker build and I specify the file. And after that, what I have to do is, I'm thinking a step ahead. I want to do a release later on. So once I build the image, it's like, I built the NuGet package or a zip package. It's the same thing. It's just the image, and it's bigger. It's not a few megs, it's a few hundred megs. But anyway, what I have to do in the next step, I have to think, okay, how I'm going to deploy that. So there's another file that I have that takes care of, deploying the Docker container onto, deploying a Docker image onto whatever host I want. And then I publish all that. So that publish only contains one PowerShell script. So what do you think if I run you through this demo? You want to see it? Okay, let's do that. So here I have my VM. So this is a nice thing, I'm running a VM, and inside VM I am running Hyper-V with Docker container on it. So that's what you don't see very often. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go to code. So first of all, if I go here to HTTP Docker, so we're going to give it a minute. It's going to come up with an existing an existing ASP.NET Core application. I'll just see why it takes so long. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a check-in in my code. So I'm going to change the title on the page. And you'll see the whole DevOps experience. So pretty much I'm doing continuous deployment back to Docker. So this is the default ASP.NET Core app. It's running on Docker. So when you see that, this is Docker for Windows specific. It's going to tell you that there is a Docker, or maybe not. I don't know. I haven't. Richard, do you know? Is VirtualBox called Docker the same? So
Does Docker machine?
Yeah.
No, I don't think it messes with DDD.
No, it doesn't. So that's Windows specific. That's why when I type in Docker, it takes me to my Docker machine. If you want to see it, let me bring up Hyper-V.
Is that Windows 10?
It's Windows 10 on Windows 10 running Hyper-V. Yeah, that's the combination. So this is the mobile Linux. That's the VM that's running on Hyper-V. And that machine is Docker. So if I connect to it, does it cache the image? You can specify it, and the problem is, things are getting messy with the Docker daemon on. So you can create an Azure Docker host if you want. It's not a problem. Things become messy when you start, switching between the two of them and, specifying which machine is active, where you want to deploy. I had heaps of trouble with that. Well, we're going to wait for that one. But the thing is that this is running a Linux machine, so whatever is there is Linux. And what I'm going to do now, let me switch to my source code. So I'm under my Docker branch, and this is the website. I'm going to do a classic change, just change the title. I'm going to commit that change back to the repo. And because I have continuous deployment set up, it's going to kick off the build. After I kick off the build, I have continuous release set up using release management. So that's where release management is so powerful. You can do whatever you want. And I'm going to deploy the Docker image that I just built through continuous deployment, and I'm going to publish it on the Linux container. So, views. Where's shared? Layout. You know, TFS is almost like Visual Studio. You have highlighting in there, you can do coding if you like. So when I click on edit, I can change things from here. I don't have to go in Visual Studio at all. So let me see, this is the nav bar. So let me change this. Watch this. I'm running on Docker. Well, too fast typing. All good. Let's commit that. So now I'm going to switch to build. And let me get to the queue. So as you can see, I have a build in the queue. Is that better? Can you see it at the back? I noticed that Richard had to put his glasses on. That's why, you know, increased the font. So what's happening here? Let me guide you through that. So it pulled down the sources. Now it's running a .NET restore, so it's pulling down the packages. You know, if they're not cached, it's going to pull them down. The next step, it'll publish that project that I have into a folder I specified. So that's what's happening now. Now it's publishing the project. And after that, it's going to copy that Docker file next to that folder that I just published. And I'm going to run Docker build after that. So just watch that happen. So that's it. Now we have a app published. Almost.
That artifact that you're going to produce, where is it going to sit in that machine?
In this case, as an artifact, I only have a PowerShell script because that's kind of a mind-shifting concept. You know, you don't. But I'll answer that question just once we get through that because I don't want people to miss the important bits now. So what's happening now? You can see I'm running Docker build, and watch this. What will happen? Now I'm sending that to daemon. Now I'm building the image. So those files that I created are pushed on the image. So I don't have them in the artifact. It's an image. It's a Docker image that I can deploy.
Yeah, so that image is quite big.
There are a few ways. So I didn't publish it, to Docker Hub because it would burn all my connection here. I was expecting there would be no internet. Yeah, but the image is big. It's a few hundred megs. So we can even check, how big is that image. So let's go to PowerShell.
Keep it in your build server, for example. You probably need a lot of this, right?
Potentially, yeah. You can delete it after you publish it. So say you want to publish that to Docker Hub, you can publish the image right after. Yeah.
Docker images you can put into an artifact repository. So you could use Artifactory or one of those type of tools. So you basically just keep a local hub effectively. So you take your image, you publish it into your local cache, and then you can
Wherever you want, pretty much. You can publish it even to Azure if you like. So let me just show you what are the images that are installed on this Docker container. So the one that I published has 260 megs. So that's the Docker image that I published. Now what happened in the back, you can see that the build finished. And if I click back on the build definition, there is one thing, that's happening down here. That's the release. So it automatically proceeded to the next phase because, I have continuous delivery set up. And if I go to that guy, it's going to open the release definition, and you will see that the release definition is running just a PowerShell script that takes care of the deployment of the Docker container. So it finished in the meantime. If I go through the logs, let me show you what happened here. So it pulled down the artifact, and the artifact was just a PowerShell script, nothing else. And in this PowerShell, what I'm doing, I'm stopping all conflicting containers. Now here's the trick, with Docker you can run as many containers if you like. If the port is taken, once you try to run the next one, it's going to say, you stop the port, and that's what I have to, take care of. If you're running multiple containers, that's what my PowerShell script does. And after that, once I stop all conflicting containers, I run a new image, and when I go here to Docker and I refresh that, it's going to take a while because it's a new container, but it's going to come up. I should have hit refresh before you started asking the questions, because right now we would see the page up there. There we go, and that's Docker on Linux. There you go. Continuous delivery straight up there. So, I have to run through these steps. So, this is the PowerShell script that takes care of the deployment. So all it does, it stops the containers and runs the new image on port 8080. And after that, we get the Docker. So, a quick summary. All you need to know about ASP.NET Core, there are 3 steps. You have to restore the package. You have to publish that somewhere, and then you use your choice, your favorite tool to deploy that. And that's it. If you need more resources, this is what you have to check. Thanks for coming in, and have a great conference for the rest of the day.